And I'm going to tell you a story about something that happened to me when I lived in Texas. I know that some people aren't going to believe this, but it really did happen, and I'm just going to tell it exactly how it was, and you can be the judge, but this is what happened. Texas, known for cowboys and barbecue, and also the Dallas Cowboys. But in Whitesboro, Texas, there was another story about to take place, and this was a nightmare on Elm Street. I just had a falling out with a man I called Pawpaw down there. He was a Korean War veteran. He was a bigwig of some type in the military, and he basically we had a falling out, and he had hit me in the head with a World War II sword case, and which, you know, that's all right. We just had a feud, and I moved out. The bottom line is, and me and his grandson, and I'm not going to mention names in this video here. We got a place in Whitesboro, Texas, and the house was on Elm Street in Whitesboro, and I always thought it was ironic, you know, because of that movie Nightmare on Elm Street. But anyway, we moved into this place, and we had gone fishing that summer and been pouring concrete that summer, and I caught an 8-pound bass. It was the biggest bass I ever caught. Anyway, I had some pictures of it, and they wouldn't give me the pictures of it because they were mad that I'd caught a big fish out of the pond of my roommate's girlfriend's parents. Let us fish over at their place, and anyway, we lived in this house, and we worked, and we went home every day, and one morning I woke up, and I got a cigarette and was smoking a cigarette, and the light was, you know, coming in through the windows, and I was wondering what we were going to be doing that day, you know, and maybe go fishing again, because I was kind of excited about fishing after catching an 8-pound bass. And anyway, I smoked a cigarette, and I put the cigarette out on the little nightstand next to the bed, and as soon as I had done that, my arm was twisted behind my back, and I was kind of looking down off to the right, and I was scared to look over and see what it was, because I'd had an experience like this, similar to this, when I was 5 years old. And anyway, I basically eased over to look, and I looked up at this thing over to my left, and it looked like a man except for the nose, and it had blue like around the nose, and his nose was long, and it kind of flopped around, and he was laughing at me, and it was a weird laugh because it was like a honking. It was like honk, 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 honk. He was just laughing. He was not worried about me. He was not concerned one bit. He looked like he came off as he was in total control of the situation. I don't know how he got in my room. He was just there. He had my arm behind my back, and he had a little instrument in his hand that looked to me kind of like a grill lighter, that kind of shaped like that, and he stuck it to the side of my head, on my temple, right here. And when he had done that, I seen a doorway open up at the end of my room, over in the corner, kind of above where the closet door was. And anyway, this door opens up, and it was like light was coming through the doorway. So when this figure walks into the doorway, it looked like the shape of a man, but it was like solid black shadow, but solid. And when he stood in this doorway, he began to shift into like a sinister shape. He was standing there like a regular man at first, and then he shifted into like a crazy looking, weird, evil looking shape. And at this point, I kind of had looked away from this thing that had a hold of my arm, and it stuck something to the side of my head, and you know, I didn't know what to do. And so I kind of looked back over, and he was laughing. He laughed again, and then all of a sudden I looked back at the thing that was in that doorway, and that doorway was probably maybe 100 feet away, but my room was only 12 feet at the most. So somehow or another, time and space seemed to be altered, and they kind of shifted my room or something, to where, how can you open a door that is 100 feet from you, and your room's only 12 feet wide? And at that point, I was scared. I was pretty scared. But then there was a roar. There was something that roared, and it seemed like it came off from the right somewhere. And it was a roar that was made the T-Rex in Jurassic Park. You know how that sound of the dinosaur was like roar, and it sounded real scary and sinister and what have you, like it could eat you in one bite. And anyway, there was a roar, and it went on and on and on. It was so freaking scary. This roar, I remember thinking when I heard it, that if you were to see what made this sound, this roar, you would surely die. You wouldn't even live through it. It was so scary of a sound. And it was so scary that when that thing roared, the guy in the doorway, I looked up at the thing in the doorway, and it even looked over. It went, over to like, and to where I thought the sound was coming up from the right, it would have been to that thing's left, and it looked over in that direction, and it scared it. The thing that was in the door got spooked, and all of a sudden that door shut, and the thing that had a hold of my arm let go, and I don't know where he went. They both were just gone like that. It scared me so bad that I didn't even sleep another night in that house. I wouldn't do it. I don't even remember getting my clothes. I was hollering for my roommate, and I was yelling his name. I was like, I'm not going to say his name because I haven't asked him about telling the story, but I yelled for him, and I was yelling his name. I'll just say Bob. I was like, Bob, Bob. As soon as this thing roared, all I knew to do was start yelling. And because I was scared at first when the thing that had me, my arm twisted, and it was laughing at me, and that was scary right there. And then all of a sudden I seen something else, and that was even scary in itself. And then a roar, and that was even scarier than all the other two. And so there was like 3 different type of beings here. And so I started yelling. I was like, Bob, Bob, Bob. And finally, it seemed like it took forever, but finally he busted in through the door, and he's like, what? And I said, did you hear that? And he said no. And so I don't know how these beings do this, but I'm telling you, they can change the atmosphere. They have technology. That thing he had in his hand, I don't know what that was, but he stuck it right to the side of my head, and it, and then that's when I seen the other thing, which is, it's odd. I don't know what either one of them were. I could say maybe the thing in the door was some kind of evil spirit, but what was the thing that had a hold of me? In the blue around it had creases like around here, and it was blue, looking like I always thought it looked like a baboon butt. The blue around his nose, man, and anyway, it had a honking laugh, and I just had a feeling maybe, I don't know if those things talk, but if it talked, it would sound strange. It would, because the way that the honking laugh was, I think if it were to speak, it would be an odd sounding voice. And the roar, I've had people tell me, I've not told many people about this at all, just a few people actually, and some people think that was an intervening thing from like God, or an angel or something, but they were saying that like God has a roar like Lion of the tribe of Judah or something, because the devil wouldn't divide his own kingdom, kind of thing. And but anyway, I left the house. I never did go back. I never did sleep in that house again. I don't even recall getting my clothes. I just left. I got straight up, I guess I grabbed my clothes or something, but I was gone. I didn't stay another night. And then I went back to Pawpaw's house, and I went in, and he was standing at the sink, and he was saying, "Thank you, Lord, praise you, Lord." And I never heard Pawpaw talk like that, and you just never heard him talk about God or anything like that. And he was like praising God, and he was saying, "Thank you, Lord, for us helping him and bringing him back here and stuff." And then he was like speaking in what I call tongues, because I've been to Pentecostal church when I was a kid, and that was what that sounded like to me. It sounded like tongues that you would see in a Pentecostal church. But I know he spoke German because he was a translator in the Nuremberg trials. So I'd heard him speak German, and I know what German sounds like, but this was not German. So I don't know if maybe he was praying because he had a premonition or something, and he knew I was in danger, and he was praying, and he was thanking God for saving me, or he prayed that God would drive me back to to him at his house, because it felt unresolved for him for the falling out we had. I really don't know. I didn't ask, and I really kind of kicked myself for that I had never asked about it. But when you have these kind of experiences, you don't talk about them until maybe years later. You just never speak of it. I had another incident happen when I was a kid, and I even had an eyewitness to that, walked in on it, and never talked about it until I was 32. And that particular incident happened when I was 5 years old. And so anyway, it was a very horrendous thing. And when I was 32, matter of fact, the first time I even talked about the first incident to anyone, I called the person who had witnessed that one. And the reason I did is because I got to thinking about this deal I'm telling you about here. I always thought, man, that was a weird looking man who had a hold of me. He was strange, his weird nose, and the blue looking thing around his nose. And I had gotten this book called the story in the book, there were several stories in the book, as I remember, but one of the stories was called I Remember Lemura, and it was written like the Shaver mystery stuff. And this story is about Teros and Deros, and I think Atlantis was like on top of the ground, and then underneath was a subterranean city they called Lemura, and this person had wrote the story about Lemura, and there was a drawing in the book. And so I read the story and what have you, and I thought, wow, that's a pretty wild story. And wasn't even thinking about this incident that happened to me, you know. And anyway, I was flipping through the pages and I ran across this picture, and it's like, oh my goodness, I cannot believe it. It was an exact, I mean, even to the drawings that I made of this incident, I didn't get the guy right because of the age. The guy in my drawing, that's what he looked like, but the age of it, I couldn't capture, you know, the age. The being kind of looked like he was 65, 70 maybe or something, but not like decrepit old. He looked, you could tell he was older. And in this picture that I seen in the book was a drawing, and it was, I about freaked out. I could not believe it. It was a drawing of the thing that was in my room. I don't know where they come from or what's the deal with them, but they do exist. And I tell you this, if anyone thinks I'm lying about it and they wanted to put me to the test, I'd take and sign my Jeep. I got a Jeep Liberty out here in front of the house. You know, I've got a few vehicles. I'd take and sign my Jeep boat over, and say, if you can prove me wrong and prove that I'm lying about this, that I give you that. This really happened, and it's an odd thing because I never really knew where to place this whole incident. And being a person who believes in God, you know, as a Christian, I didn't know how to classify this and where to put that in context of my faith, because I know God's real, and I believe that. And so, you know, the Bible has to have an explanation for who these beings are. I mean, even like a cherubim has got four faces, like a bull and an eagle and a man's face and a lion's face. It's got four different faces. So that would be a very odd looking creature if you ever seen a cherubim. You know, the one that like guarded the tree in the Garden of Eden and had a sword that turned every way. And I think even a sword that turns every way, what's that mean other than guarding dimensions? Because these beings can open up other dimensions. He opened a door, and it was not this dimension. He changed my room, and that, even when it's made me interested in paranormal type stuff, and I think a lot of people are duped about that kind of thing because I don't believe in ghosts. I don't believe they're ghosts. I believe they're demonic entities that are posing as ghosts because they're deceiving spirits. The Bible talks about deceiving spirits and what have you. So I don't know if this thing made himself appear that way, or if this was actually a being that God has created in the far past, in ancient times, like in the Bible where you have east or eastward, things like that. In the very beginning of the Bible in Genesis, these words don't only just mean a direction. They can mean a direction, but they also refer in the Hebrew as time. So time and space, the Hebrew language don't have words that are separate. They're the same words for time and space. And you know, I've looked into all these kind of things because I've always been curious about what this is. And I'm telling you, there are beings out there that we encounter sometimes that are real. And some of them have technology and use it against us, and that's a scary thing. So when you think about the Bible even talks about firing fiery darts at you, and you have to have a way to quench them, to block these fiery darts. I think that sometimes these kind of things, if you look at that story, and like I remember Lemura, and I'm not saying that's no word of God or nothing like that, but I think there's a little bit of truth to some of that stuff, the way that they put it, because those Taro and Dero, the Dero was like a race of beings that was had problems from degrading over time. The Dero, I mean, it's kind of a stupid way to put it, being detrimental robots, but it didn't mean they were like robots. They were degraded from the radiation from the sun over a long period of time. They became kind of like a reprobate type of people, and they had no control over like sexual desires or any. They loved pleasure and technology in the story, to where they could aim it at you and they could tap into you, affect your thinking. They could like even read like your brain waves and tell what you're thinking. And so there was some pretty bizarre things, and this thing had some kind of device in his hand that he used to manipulate me and my ability to perceive. And I think about that God helmet that I seen on TV, where the scientists had this helmet where they put on people, and it had a magnet right there on the area where he stuck that device. And when they turned that helmet on in these scientific experiments, it made these people perceive other beings, and so they think, well, that proves that it's not true, and basically, you know, since we can make this happen with our equipment, then these things are just hoaxes and just a perception of the mind. But I think you can actually tap into the mind and make a person see into the other dimensions and perceive beings and what have you, just like they could do, our scientists can do today. Pretty interesting stuff.